without further ado, I'd like to invite you to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. First of all, thank you very much to the organizers to give us a floor and opportunity to introduce to international audience and to you specifically the achievements of our projects. It's been a great journey for myself and Jenny Tennyson, who is unfortunately not here. We've been co-chairing this group since the beginning, and the whole journey was a great demonstration of great collaboration, of friendship, and expression of great devotion to do something good for AI, because AI is incredibly powerful tool and should work for the common good of the humanity and planet. So with not to continue to speak a lot about it, I want to give opportunity also to Jenny to say a couple of words to you. Jenny cannot be here, but she sent a video to say hello to you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Data Governance public session. I wish I could be with all of you in New Delhi today for what promises to be an excellent session with my co-chair Maya Bogataj and our colleagues from the working group. I am with you today in spirit and in solidarity with GPA's common goal to look at responsible AI governance, and more particularly in our data governance working group to examine how good data governance can contribute to AI that works for all of us. This summit marks the end of my mandate as both expert and co-chair of the data governance working group. It's been a stimulating and exciting experience for me, and a real privilege to lead this working group of smart, knowledgeable people who genuinely care about the responsible governance of AI and what can be put in place to guarantee the best practices for good data governance. Our working group has played a crucial role within GPA as we've explored the role of data governance in a complex and evolving context. When Maya and I stepped into the mandate of co-chairs back in 2020, we laid the foundations for our future work, developing a framework for our work and commissioning research on the ways in which data contributes to AI and the gaps in the landscape. This and the applied research agenda we developed with the working group led to a range of projects that investigated different aspects of data governance: legal, technical, organisational and cultural. I'm most proud of the deep work we carried out looking at the importance of data justice throughout the AI lifecycle. Without proper attention being paid to data justice, AI development will simply replicate the biases and inequities of our current world, including the exclusion of the majority world in shaping our technologies and policies. In other projects, we looked at different techniques to support safe data sharing through organisational structures such as data trusts and data institutions. We also delivered one of GPA's first successful technical demonstrations with the Government of Singapore by applying privacy-enhancing and rights-enhancing technologies. As you'll hear, this year, our group has made progress on applied projects that examine the role of government as a provider of data for AI and the complexities of assigning rights over code-generated data, such as in generative AI. I'm very proud of our successes and achievements for the last 3 years, and I'm confident that the Data Governance Working Group will continue to progress by welcoming different visions and varying approaches to tackle the challenges of data governance. I'm sorry again that I can't be with you today, and I hope you enjoy both the session and the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Jenny for this great introduction. It needs to be said, I'm saying at every summit, at the beginning I was saying that data governance is a hard-working cousin of artificial intelligence. Today we know with generative AI that it's the mother of artificial intelligence. It doesn't sound so appealing as AI, but without doing data governance right, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get good AI. And this is the focus of, this was and is a focus of our work, and it's demonstrated in our projects as well. To repeat, our mandate as the Data Governance Working Group is to look at the role of data and the way it is collected, used, shared, archived, and deleted to support applied AI. So, and of course, we are looking into all of this in the line with the goals of GPay. But without wasting any additional time, the best demonstration of the success of our working group is to present our projects. So we are going to run through the 5 different projects, but we are starting first with the presentation of co-generated data project, which examines how existing concept of data sharing in co-generating scenarios have been developed so far. Needless to say, the importance of this project exploded as the issues exploded when the ChatGPT was thrown on the market. So I'll give the word to my dear 2 co-leads. I think that Christiane Wendehorst is going to make presentation of the project. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maya. So I'll start the video.
Dear audience at the GPI Summit 2023 in New Delhi, it's really a pleasure for us to be here. I'm Christiane Wendehorst.
And I'm Kyoko Yoshinaga. We co-lead the project From Co-Generated Data to Generative AI, New Rights and Governance Models in Digital Ecosystems. Sorry we cannot be there in person.
We are going to give you a short project summary. First of all, we will describe the project objectives. Then we will summarize some of our key findings and activities in 2023 and give you an outlook for what's coming ahead in 2024. So what is the CoGen project about? We want to examine how existing concepts of co-generation have been developed so far and how they address an AI-specific context. Because in the digital world we see a co-generation of data, of content, and of technology itself is a key phenomenon. And we need to be sure that the legal regimes we have are really able to address those situations in an appropriate manner. So we want to determine the extent to which existing concepts and regimes, such as those developed by the American Law Institute and European Law Institute, can be applied also to co-generation of content and of AI itself, in particular, but not exclusively, generative AI. And we want to examine how the concepts developed for individual rights translate to collective digital rights and contribute thereby to the transnational convergence of national and regional policies on the design and allocation of digital rights. Our key activities in 2023 were the following. And when I say we, it's not just Kyoko and myself and all the other colleagues from the GPI steering committee, to whom we are very indebted for their support. It's also the Open Data Institute and the APTI Institute, with whom we partnered to conduct this research and to examine the variety of rights and legal protections that are available to those who have co-generated data, content, and AI. Now, who has rights in data, on what basis, and what these rights might mean are fundamental questions we have addressed as part of this year's research. Inter alia, we conducted a literature review that produced a framework for analysis. And we examined 6 co-generational scenarios using the framework. And we conducted also 13 interviews with international experts that offered further in-depth information. The findings suggest that the current legal frameworks do not adequately address the unbalanced power dynamics between AI technology companies and co-generators in particular. And this can impact the latter's ability to act on these rights. For each of the 6 scenarios mentioned, we selected a specific case study to show diversity across the dimensions above. This selection is represented in the table which you see on this slide. For each of the 6 scenarios, we began with some background contextual research, which involved looking specifically at the parties involved, the nature of contributions to data generation, the level of involvement of co-generating parties, and the jurisdictions. Building on the desk research from the prior phase, we conducted additional research and analysis for each scenario and covered company documents and national legislation, as well as academic and grey literature.
What we found out so far during the year 2023 are shown here. The current landscape is dominated by big tech companies that wield huge amounts of power over other co-generators. A harm-led approach to understand the impacts is critical for a robust analysis. Prioritizing a multi-stakeholder approach in developing rights framework is critical. And there is no one-size-fits-all solution, but a diverse set of potential solutions and a need to have contextual nuance. Our next steps for 2024 is that in coming March, we aim to publish our first report examining the current co-generation landscape and presenting guiding principles on co-generation, including with regard to collective rights and potential rights in technology such as generative AI. From there, the project will seek to explore 2 specific approaches for implementing the developed co-gen guiding principles. One is assessing what appropriate licensing schemes could look like when applied to a co-generated context. And 2, develop an understanding of existing technical solutions, which may help enable putting these principles into practice. We believe that this is a very meaningful project, as more and more co-generated works will be created using AI in the future. Please look forward to our forthcoming report in March, and we would be very grateful to have your comments. Thank you, and we wish you all a great success at GPI Summit in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christian and Kyoko.
Dear audience at the
for all
GPI
the
Summit
work.
2023 in
And
New
we'll
Delhi.
try to not
It's
have
really a
repeats.
pleasure.
Thank you. Try it like that. Yes, excellent. So I would like now to invite Jingyi and Jalak to present the next project, the role of government as a provider of data for AI, and I'll give you the clicker. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm Jingyi Liu. The pronunciation of my Chinese name is Liu Jingyi. Good. Okay, and I'm also super happy to be here to do the first in-person presentation on our project on government data. My colleague is also here, and Jalak, I think she is going to speak something wonderful after me. And for the beginning of our presentation, I would like to, first express our gratefulness to the teamwork of Research ICT Africa. And it's a wonderful team led by Rachel Adams, and also some contributions from a team of legal scholars from AI Center of Excellence in Taiwan. It's actually supported by National Science and Technology Council of Taiwan. And we'll also deliver our big thanks to our co-chairs, Maya and Jenny, for their wonderful guidance, and also the contributions of our experts in this group. So this is basically our project objectives. In terms of objectives, we have 4 pillars in this project. The first thing is we would like to provide guidance to governments on the sharing of government data with AI developers for the development of AI systems. And in doing so, we want to increase the availability and use of publicly held data through our demonstration of the safe ways in which government data sharing can be done. And the third part of our project objective is to ensure that government data sharing for development of AI is actually grounded in the principles of respecting human rights, inclusion, diversity, innovation, and also economic growth. And finally, we aimed at the provision of legal and ethical principles that will guide governments on responsible data sharing. In the past maybe 10 months, we have several major research activities. The first one, and perhaps the most important part, is we have tried to map 4 illustrative case studies from 3 key regions, Africa, Latin America, and also UK. And these case studies provide us in-depth description and provide us tangible examples of government data sharing with AI developers. The second part of our research is actually a detailed research into how governments are actually making data available in governed ways. And we have tried to navigate complex dynamics, including technical environment for data sharing, and also public attitude and trust, issues of cybersecurity, and also fair financial models. The third part of our project activity is actually of 3 full-size workshops. They were designed in a future scenario mapping manner with the participation from the GPay Data Governance Working Group and also experts from African and Latin American regions for purpose of generating deeper insights and analysis into what future scenarios in data governance in government data sharing might look like, particularly in the healthcare, energy, and welfare or social protection benefits sectors. And the final part of our work for the past year is a conduction of an overall assessment and analysis of the global data sharing landscape with a view to designing and proposing principles to guide the formulation of national policies and regulations. In this slide, I would like to talk a little bit about our case studies. And because we don't have much time for this, so I will just offer a very brief descriptions of the cases, and you guys can always check on our full report from the website, of course, GPay. We have 4 case studies, and they are aimed at the understanding of current models of data sharing by the government with the private sectors. We actually assessed the objective of data sharing by governments and the mechanism for data sharing with the aim of identifying benefits, risk, and also recommendations that we can use for the future. So the first case is the UK case. In UK, somebody maybe in this room might know that the NHS and the DeepMind company, Google AI company, entered into a data sharing agreement so that DeepMind can develop an app, some kind of diagnosis app. And the NHS actually released the personal health data of 1 million patients to DeepMind. And the parties did not actually follow data governance safeguards already in place. And this actually gave rise to some public backlash and also sanctions from oversight institutions. The second case is a case also from the sector of healthcare. It's a case from Taiwan. We call this a health passbook case. In Taiwan, the government introduced an app. We call it a health passbook. And in this case, users of the app can select which third-party providers can access their personal data, personal health data, to provide customized services. The government does not directly share data with third parties in this case, but the government serves as a facilitator by verifying third parties in line with data governance principles. And I think this case study provides an alternative for governments who are risk averse to play a different role in how data is shared for the development of AI. The third case is a case from Nigeria. It's a case from the social protection sector. In Nigeria, the government implemented a new social protection program during the height of COVID-19 pandemic to make cash transfers to urban Nigerians who were affected by the pandemic, and to identify the number of beneficiaries who could be eligible under the new program. The Nigerian government contracted with a company to develop a solution that can help make decisions about the identification of eligible beneficiaries. And the government also transferred its social protection database to the company, and at the same time transferred its data to some telecom companies who further helped in the identification of other eligible beneficiaries. In this case, actually raised some issues to us, including data privacy, implications of automated decision-making, and others. The last case is a case called the A-Climate Agriculture Data Platform. We think it's a data commons initiative to build AI tools for farmers to make decisions with useful and actionable information. And I think it's a good case for our demonstration of government sharing non-personal data for responsible AI development. And this kind of approach is a great first step for many governments that are reluctant to share any data to start with sharing non-personal data in pilot programs. And this is also a case study for us to produce an example of the need to have a more flexible policy design of various data governance frameworks developed for AI. And the next step would be what we can learn from all the cases. So I'm sure my colleague, Jalak, will provide you a very sensible and comprehensive explanations about what lessons we have produced from the case studies, and also our recommendations of principles of data governance by government. Thank you.
Thank you, Chingy. It's been such a pleasure working with everyone on this project, and it's been an incredible learning experience. I think one of the interesting things that came out as we mapped these different case studies was the real lack of concrete case studies to map. I think globally we hear of a lot of governments sharing data with private sector, but when it came down to it, for us to find documented cases where this had been done in a public and transparent manner, there were very, very few examples. And I think that really pointed to the need for this project and the importance of really designing some kind of mechanisms, guidance, input for governments around how they can effectively, safely, in a human rights respecting manner, create mechanisms for data sharing with the private sector. I think, examining from a sort of a macro perspective, the 4 case studies that Chingy has very nicely taken us through, threw forward some sort of key lessons and insights in terms of what to do or what not to do. And I'll just quickly take you through them and then perhaps walk you, these really feed into some of the principles and guidance that we've started to put together as we conclude our work on this report. And one of the key ideas that I think resonated through all the different case studies and the criticisms was that data sharing should really be done for the benefit of the data subjects. And that should really underpin any decision by governments around any kind of data sharing that is done, either for the use by government themselves, if a private sector organization is developing an application for them, or if it is being shared with the private sector for the development of a socially beneficial private sector application. And there must be a lot of openness and transparency around such data sharing, both in terms of informing the public that this is happening, the manner in which this is happening, the extent to which this is happening, as well as the ability of perhaps multiple organizations to be able to access and use and harness this data, so that it is not captured by a few within the national context or market. Learning from the NHS study and several of the other studies, I think independent oversight by a regulatory authority or some such related mechanism is very important. The ICO played a key role in holding the parties accountable in the context of the various violations that happened in the NHS case study. Of course, data minimization in sharing data is paramount. There's an inherent tension over there very often in the context of AI, because very often the incentive is to try to share as much data as possible, because you don't quite know how much data is enough and what data will be most relevant and useful in the development of a particular AI application. But I think careful thought and mindfulness needs to be given to the amount of data that is being released and shared. There should be a clear legal basis for data sharing. There should be clear data sharing agreements, contracts that are entered into, or there should be an underlying clear legally backed institutional mechanism of data stewardship, data trusts that must be set up to enable this data sharing. And it's very important that human oversight is created over the development of these automated systems, whether this is some kind of a public mechanism, a government-based mechanism, or a multi-stakeholder mechanism that's developed. And then going back to something that I opened with, transparency and data subject participation is key to building public trust. And this is reflected in one of the principles that we've developed, that there should be some kind of mechanism for data subjects to be able to opt out of the sharing of their data. And of course, we come back to the very important but theoretical concepts of data collaboration, equitable data sharing models, data justice, and protection of human rights. And the only way that we can actually operationalize this is, of course, through guiding principles. But what we envisage for the next phase of the project is to work with certain governments where they are seeking to share data, to be able to develop actionable specifics around how such data should be shared, specific guidance, which is difficult to sort of articulate at a high level. So drawing from the points that I just articulated, of course, public benefit should be an underpinning value for the sharing of data. There must be accountability of these systems. They should be auditable. There should be assessments. Data subjects should be able to participate, opt out, opt in. Values of data equity, data justice, human rights, privacy, preventing bias should all be baked into the design of these systems. Transparency is a must. A lot of public consultation, multi-stakeholder engagement is imperative to enable and engender public trust in the development of such data sharing mechanisms. Safety and security is really important to ensure accurate, reliable, and robust AI systems, and data minimization and proportionality have to be really important and kept in mind around the quantum of data being shared. Thank you so much. We look forward to the next phase of the project and working with our incoming co-chairs, Shamik and Bernard, on developing this in actionable ways further.
Thank you very much to you both. So Shamik, I'd like to invite you to take the floor. Absolutely.
I'm sorry. Okay, is this working? Nope. Let's try. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah. Okay.
For the video, people are
I think this is working.
Okay, cool. Oh, there's a video. Yeah. Okay. Now, the reason I wanted to use a microphone is because I was responsible for at least somewhat for the delay in start. So, in order to make up, I'm going to not try and take you all through the slides. Instead, I'm going to hopefully try a conversation. A little bit of engagement from the audience. What do you think is the single biggest reason for AI not having made a big difference to any of the public good requirements around climate or agriculture or poverty or health? What do you think is the biggest barrier to AI not having been there for good yet? There's no right answer, so data security? Clarity. Sorry? Clarity. Very good. No Others? Willingness. Say that again, Robert? No willingness. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Useless. That's a good one. Sorry? Awareness.
What about saying that it has made an impact?
It probably has as well. But I think the point I was making is it has probably not made as much impact as we would like it to, given the...
Half full, half empty.
Yeah. And I guess I'm always in life have been the glass half empty person. So I guess the context for this conversation is, or this session is, I do believe, and so did the working group, that it is glass half empty, that you cannot use AI for good if you are not able to find the data sets, you meaning whoever is trying to do it, the data sets that are necessary in order to have effect on agriculture at scale or climate at scale or health at scale, right? And you mentioned security as one of the concerns. I think somebody else mentioned lack of clarity as a concern. And these will all come through. I'm going to try and not use the slides, actually. I'll just talk you through because the slides are just a bunch of text. So if you look at the first two sessions, they're all connected. The first session was about how do you have mechanisms, legal mechanisms, I suppose, contractual mechanisms to enable sharing of data, right? That was the first session. Not just sharing of data, to enable clarity on who has the rights, who gets the benefits, how can it be used, etc. The second picked a particular equation, which is between the government and its citizens, and how that data is made available. By the way, you missed out on MyInfo in Singapore. You should have checked that. That's also one other area. It's not direct sharing of information, by the way. That is a bit like the Taiwan passbook case. But there are examples of governments doing that as well. This now looks at a third element. What prevents a government or even a private organization that has access to a lot of data and is not a big tech company that is hoping to make a business out of it? What do you think is the single biggest barrier to sharing that data? Why do organizations not like sharing data? Yeah, there's a little bit of hint in the title, right? I mean, I actually think one of the biggest reasons is they don't want that data to be shared, either for commercial reasons or more likely it highlights something that you didn't want to highlight. I remember when I became chief data officer of a bank, my big idea was we'll have a big billboard in our main headquarters with one new interesting fact. For those of you who are in India, a bit like the Amul cartoons every week, I'd have one new interesting fact about the bank. Very quickly, I looked at the facts that I was going to share and I realized every week I'm going to get in trouble with somebody or the other because the data I'm going to illustrate is going to make someone unhappy. So that's the point of this, right? It's called privacy enhancing technologies, but really it's any technology or a bunch of technologies, of which I'm not a deep technical expert, that allow you to anonymize the data, to make it, not just anonymized, but to make it shareable in a way that you still protect, in theory, the rights of the individual or the company whose data it was. And the reason we called it PETS Plus is because actually the same technologies can also be used to address other concerns like sovereignty, right? Which is often a bigger concern for some of these. Like imagine someone working on supply chain watermarking, right? Yeah, if you have a supply chain in Bangladesh, India, Africa, actually is it Manchester, wherever whoever is in the UK will know, there's one city in the UK which has a modern slavery issue with a textile company because nobody knows who's working at what wages for that. It sounds like a great idea to use IoT and data collection to do that. But suddenly the governments are going to object because you might, inadvertently so the bad reason would be you might expose, but the good reason might be actually you don't have enough assurance around that data and you're going to somehow give non-contextual data where it looks very bad, but in reality it's probably the best thing possible there. So because of those concerns, the thinking in the working group, and I'm going to talk as much, the reason I'm not using the slides as much is I want to talk as much about what we couldn't achieve as what we could achieve, because if we have a discussion, maybe it would be a good one to have there. What we did achieve is we set out to say, how can we prove to everybody, governments and others, that by using such technologies, you can overcome those fears. Frankly, fears are never government's fears. It is not a government that is afraid. It is an official. It is the head of the health service agency. It is the head, Bernard knows, of a city's transport authority. He or she is concerned. So what can we do by demonstrating that technology exists out there to make it work, right? That was the objective. One more time. What do you think was the biggest problem in our project? Data laws. What else? Education. Any others?
The government doesn't want to give up the data.
You're very close to that. Yes. So it was not just government. Nobody. So we have whatever we need. And it's actually all of those. There is an element of we don't want to share even for your small project because it's too risky. But then also there is actually what will I gain with this? I already have the models I want, or in this case this was for predictive models. Why do I need privacy enhancing technology? And this is actually the bigger problem for this whole area. Because we are used to thinking of data in a certain construct, we are, in the words of, and now I'll give up my age, in the words of Donald Rumsfeld, the ex-vice president, you don't know the unknown unknowns. You know the known unknowns and you know the known knowns, etc., right? So the unknown unknowns are, if suddenly I had access to 100 times more data than before, but in a safe way, how would that change my ability to predict, my ability to influence things? It is an impossible task to convince anybody almost in the period of a year to do that. So our biggest struggle, after spending a lot of time and effort, was to find use cases that could actually sign up and say, yep, we will take your money and your technology in order to implement it. So sadly, in the end, we ended up with actually a pretty good case. It was a case for, so I've given you it was a case for, So it's a model that was there in Singapore because the execution was by a Singapore government team, government agency team. It was actually a model built for cruise ships. Remember in the early days, there was a lot of problems with COVID on cruise ships. And so the Singapore government started doing cruise ships to nowhere as a way of making sure that the industry is protected. And remember, we're an island, we can't really go anywhere. So, okay, let's start doing that. Different argument on whether it was good for the environment, never mind. But as you did that, one of the things you wanted was to use the contact tracing data, because we had the Bluetooth-enabled contact tracing, to predict who might be a likely risk from a COVID perspective, and then inform them and protect and so on, right? So that was the original model. So the original model did not have privacy protection. Which, by the way, if you follow the news, it actually caused a problem because it was meant to be used only for this. It turned out some of this evidence was used for a murder investigation. And the minister unfortunately had to come in and say, well, sorry, we didn't realize, but once we have the data, we are forced to use the data we had. It was used for a good purpose. But it led to this is the point, motivation comes in because there was already a bit of a concern in the government saying people are not trusting us as good stewards. So actually, could privacy enhancing technologies help us? So that was all it was. So in some ways, it was a very simple project. After a big search across the world, we came up with this one use case saying there was a very good model, but that depended on a level of, and it was only 1-to-1. Ideally, we would have found a case which was multiple organizations. This wasn't. This was just, I guess, the individual. It wasn't even the cruise company and the government. It was just the individual's mobile Bluetooth signals and, I guess, the mobile telco provider, because you did identify the person, and the government health agency, the Ministry of Health. So what we did was we tried to see, we meaning actually within the government, another team, it looked at 2 different privacy enhancing technologies, and based on that, they tried to see whether the results produced by using privacy enhancing technologies would replicate. And we didn't actually try and predict again because those people were long gone or they were alive hopefully, but they were all no longer infected by COVID. So instead we tried to look at, basically the model was based on 3 key inputs: close contacts, casual contacts, and transient contacts. And as you can see, the with pet and without pet versions were reasonably close. So from a project perspective, we managed to demonstrate what we set out to demonstrate, which is actually you can get many of the benefits, in this case of this predictive model, by using privacy enhancing technologies. So in that sense, it was a success. But remember, I told you I'm going to talk about success, but also about what we didn't succeed in. What we didn't succeed in is, firstly, as I said, the nature of this project. This was already a problem that had been solved. This wasn't a big problem, except for saying maybe in future we will be more respectful of privacy. It wasn't solving a new problem. Now imagine for a moment this was 2 government departments, 3 private sector organizations, I don't know, and citizens all together. If this was solving a problem like that, then it would have been powerful. So I think one of our failures, not successes, whatever you want to call it, is not finding an impactful enough case study that really demonstrates how AI can be used for good in a way that cannot be done today. We just showed that something you are doing today can be done slightly better, slightly safer. But I would ideally have liked to do something like that. Why am I saying this? If any of you have use cases like that, please, we still have the option of reusing this next year. So by all means, do that. But I think there's another reason for saying this, which is data governance, as Maya said at the start, is a very dry subject. Nobody says, I want to be a data governance person. I know loads of people who want to say, I want to work in AI, I want to work in machine learning, I want to work in data science. Now, I was chief data officer. Everybody used to think I do all of that. Then they'd come to me and say, what jobs do you do? Oh, I'm the chief janitor of the bank. I clean up all the mess that exists across. Sometimes chief plumber, get the plumbing right. Nobody wants to do this stuff. But actually, unless you understand these implications, you don't think of what I can do with data, right? So to me, the big thing that I think we semi-succeeded in is that we created awareness about this need for greater education on the power of data and indeed of the importance of data for AI. Now, we did this all this largely before generative AI came in. I have to say now, I think this is much better understood. So I think with that, I'll stop. I think the key point I want to make is I want you to see the theme across the 3 projects you've heard so far. The common theme is AI should not just be used to benefit one individual or one company. It should be used to benefit all of humanity, all of society. To do that, its use has to extend to things that impact at scale, not one organization, not one citizen. To do that, you need data that sits nominally under different ownerships. A government, an individual, a company, a civil society, whatever, right? Maybe even not a human being. Maybe the ownership sits, nobody knows who owns the data because it's in IoT machines everywhere and no one is really the owner of that. And so in order to have AI that genuinely has an impact on the UN development goals, etc., you need to be able to have better, sharing is the wrong word because you don't physically share the data, but better availability of data across ownerships, across boundaries, across organizations. And doing that requires better legal frameworks, better contractual terms on co-generated data. It requires, frankly, the biggest single owner of data other than Google and Meta, which is the governments, to be much more open to sharing. And perhaps some of this logic could also be applied to the very big tech firms as well. And of course, it requires enabling technologies. So that's where I'll finish. In the end, if all we did as GPay was talked only about principles, I come from industry, it's fantastic to have principles and regulations. But if you're going to implement them one by one by one with human policymakers and lawyers and bureaucrats and people like me, plumbers and janitors, fixing them one by one, it's not going to scale. You need enabling technology layers. So if we can get to a stage where contract law, contract formats, government protocols on sharing data, all of this are well established, and then it's underpinned by two things. One, technology that enables you to do this systematically, and two, very crucially, education. I mean, I don't know what you found in the UK government piece, but I never found out what exactly did DeepMind do wrong. Maybe it broke the law, but I'd be really interested in seeing, did it actually cause any harm? I think a lot of it is just people being very scared. The reality is, I wasn't with a UK GP for a long time. It's very likely that the GP would have left my data here and there. It could have been accessed by anybody else. But just because it's DeepMind, and just because it's the government giving the data without my consent, I get worried. Maybe if I had better frameworks for governments to share data, better comfort on the technology that was used to share data, maybe we would all be more open to getting the benefits of our own data. With that hope, I'll finish and move to the next one.
Thank you very much, Amit. Thank you. Yeah, it will be at the end because we're kind of on a tight schedule, and I'd like to invite Thomas to present. Yes, please, Shamik, to present the Trustworthy Data Institution Framework, and if you could try to make it 8 minutes, that's the challenge for you today.
Okay.
You're here.
One here?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I was trying to see the screen. Sorry, never mind. It's okay.
Okay, thank you so much. I will try to make it in 8 minutes. Yes, so this project is built on the previous work done by Open Data Institute and APTI on data trust. But from their work, they received this recommendation to try to explore how local community and organization can be empowered by data institution, and how they can play an active role in value chain. So that was our mandate in this project. And to do so, we fixed 2 sub-objectives. The first one was to try to map the data ecosystem, and the second one to co-design a framework with a local community. And to achieve this, we conduct a pilot study in Cameroon, specifically as part of Lac Chad Basin, where people are facing climate-induced migration. So we spend time there, speaking with local community to understand and to make sure that they understand, they have the same, or we have a common understanding of the importance of having data coming from the fieldwork, and see how we can build with them a better way to empower them, to bring them on board when we are talking about data governance, or when organization collecting data in the field can better engage with them. After this phase, we continue our second phase with the co-design of the framework. And we did this phase with the support of Microsoft and local organization. As a result, we have 2 grid reports that you can find in the GPay website. The first one is specifically related to the Lac Chad Basin. All the results we get, you can see the comment from local communities and so on. And the second one is the trustworthy data institutional framework. And this trustworthy data institutional framework is informed by what we learn in the field work and from the previous work done by the data governance and the responsible AI working group since the beginning of the GPA, if I may. But let me dive with you in the TDIF, the Trustworthy Data Institution Framework, because we have a lot of principles, but the main question people are asking sometimes is, what next? What can we do with all these principles in order to achieve this kind of engagement with local community? So we decide, we succeed to develop a practical tools that data institution or organization seaworthy data can use in order to better engage with local community. And if I guess some of you received this flyer or this brochure, so you can go through it and you will see that the TDF itself, this is the main vision that we have. The vision is built around 4 pillars, if you want, 4 elements. And the first element is the extended data life cycle. Usually we have a common data life cycle, but if you take a look on this TDF or the vision that you have in front of you or on the paper, we have 2 nodes that we added, specifically data literacy and data infrastructure and tools, because sometimes we put this node aside as they are not part of the data life cycle, but it's very important to be sure that local community are trained, they can understand what data are and how they can be used to improve data governance. And the second pillars of this, of our vision is the combined data governance approach with some value and principles so that we can meet all related to openness and be sure that privacy is respected and so on. The third pillar is mostly this possibility to be aware that the role we are playing in the data ecosystem can be interchangeable. So sometimes we can be a data provider, sometimes we can be a data institution managing information for local organizations. So it's not a static role that we are playing. It depends on the context, it depends on the domain on which we are working. And the 4 pillars is the dynamics amongst these stakeholders. So, but you can see the arrow on the TDF. Each communities or each actor should be involved in the different nodes of the data lifecycle. It's very important to ensure that people and local community are engaged in the process of governance from the beginning to the end. And just to facilitate and to give a practical tool to data institution or to organization, we designed also an evaluation grid that you can take. We did it at SEMIA. We evaluate ourselves, our level of maturity. You can use it to see where you stand as an organization in terms of increasing or building trustworthy in your practice, and in terms of engagement also with local communities. So you have some, I will not dive in because there's a lot of things to say here, but the interesting part is that you have some variable and you can evaluate each variable based on the annex. We have 2 annexes in the full report. And from this, when you are done with the evaluation, you can take some concrete action. So we suggested some concrete action in Annex B, also in the full report. So here are some of the action we are promoting. And we need to flag that it's important. We are not promoting a straightforward process, but it's an evolutive process, because when you evaluate yourself, you can find that you are just at level 1, but don't be afraid. You can improve your process, you can improve your practice, and make like an objective to meet or to to reach to level 2 in 2 years and so on. So it's an evolutive process. I think for the next phase, I think we are just working to disseminate the TDF and to automate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Thanks very much, Thomas. I'd like to invite Alison Gilwell, the co-lead of the Data Justice Project, to present you the project itself.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for all the presentations so far. Just to add to Shamik's point, I think what you see running through all of these presentations is this concept that has been really embraced by the Data Governance Working Group of Data Justice. And I really think we do have to thank our co-chairs for really championing this. I think initially a little bit of maybe sort of left wing or off stage or whatever the expression is, proposal into this very strong technical and legal working group. But I think it really has highlighted the importance of moving beyond, rights-centered, which of course we want, ethical frameworks which are coming out very strongly in the technical environment, to say that even when you've met these criteria, unless you look at issues of redress, unless you look at issues of equality, you may still not have just outcomes in your data governance. So this project really, grappled for some time with what is understood by the issues of data justice. There had initially been some academic work done in this area by pioneers, we're probably familiar to some of you. But for the working group, we said data justice has been understood by the working group as fairness in the way that groups are made visible, represented and empowered as beneficiaries in the collection and use of data for the development of AI systems. It promotes a broader lens than a narrower conception of data governance, which is historically focused or traditionally focused on compliance and individualized notions of privacy. It does so by providing a framework to account for collective identities in view of the particular impact that AI decision-making systems have at the community level. And this work really had two main kind of phases to it. Initially, the work looked at a kind of mapping and a literature review towards establishing this framework, which really tried to bridge the gap between, as I said, some research and some practice that had happened in this area, by considering the issues of social and economic justice in the utilization of data or the use of data for AI development. The research component, which was advancing research knowledge in this area, established guiding principles for data justice to broaden current perspectives, inform just data policies, and advance the field beyond these individualized notions of privacy, which we mentioned, or ethics, simply ethics by design. That's also important, but not sufficient. Focusing on equity and justice in all categories of relevant stakeholders. And the really enormous literature review, very, very impressive, with 300 sort of data sources and things. It is available on the GPAI website for those of you who are doing research in this area. It's a massive project, and then arising from these guidelines, these in-depth guidelines for policymakers, for developers, and for communities and individuals. The practice, we are trying to provide actionable resources that will help policymakers, practitioners, and impacted communities gain a broader understanding of what equitable, freedom-promoting, and right-sustaining data collection, governance, and use should look like in increasingly dynamic and global data innovation system. Just to say that this work has involved a number of partners that were drawn in through focus groups and through understanding and mapping data governance issues on the ground, and how these might or not currently contribute to data justice. That work was commissioned, the initial academic, advancing the academic research and knowledge in that area was undertaken by the Alan Turing Institute, and the partners were commissioned by the Alan Turing Institute to begin to move beyond the research and kind of grapple with some of the issues on the ground. And several of those stories, which are, wonderfully bring the issues to people's living, daily lives, are also available on the website. And now also in this publication that we have here, which summarizes some of those partner inputs in the big spread in the middle, which I won't open right now. And then, of course, we also, as Research ICT Africa, which is the organization from which I represent, conducted some policy briefs with some social and economic primers to try and explain some of the issues that were underlying this very practical policy brief for policymakers. And on that, we worked with IT for Change. And of course, very many people involved from the working group, and in fact, inputs from other working groups as well, which were really contributed to the outputs that were produced. So key activities in 2023. As I said, the project was in the last phase of the second phase of that project, it was really trying to move from research to practice. We were really looking very practically at both those issues of social and economic justice, as I mentioned. The original work had looked very strongly at the social justice underpinnings, but I think in practice, the issues of economic justice necessary to redress not only the uneven harms that we know happen, through data-driven technologies, that can happen through data technologies that are not governed effectively, but also the uneven distribution of opportunities, which I think has not come out as much in some of the responsible AI policy framing of this work. That yes, we obviously need to move from these individualized notions of privacy, but very importantly, we need to create the conditions for people to be able to be beneficiaries of these systems, both through public value creation that has been spoken about, but also through private and commercial development of these systems, which as we know is very unevenly distributed both between countries and regions and also between individuals. So as I said, there's this follow-up consultation, post-project consultations with the policy pilot partners and GPA's data justice community of independent experts to gather feedback on the process, any applications that there were, to shed light on the realities of impacted communities, and to advise on the prioritization of data to tackle some of these challenges. And I think some examples of some practical application. This process was underway and had already gone through the first few phases when we were undertaking the African Data Policy Framework in Africa. And the data policy framework, unlike many other governance frameworks, which already can assume certain things are in place, are very concerned with issues of redress. And in fact, in the African Data Policy Framework, the task team and the member states ultimately adopted as a central part of the enabling framework this notion of data justice. The notion of data justice referring, as I mentioned, to rectifying those uneven impacts, but also importantly the opportunities that Africa is hoping to build within the context of the Continental Free Trade Area and various things that the data policy framework will inform. And then we've got a data justice two-pager, which is to establish a point of entry to data justice notions that's inclusive and easily understandable and serves a summary of the data justice project. And of course, all of these link to the deeper research underlying them. And then there's been a social media awareness campaign, which I hope you've seen and that you are following and hopefully promoting on X. And also on various other forums. And really, it's just trying to target this broader audience to get multiple perspectives, to highlight some of the data justice work that, as I said, I think has been taken considerably further, and particularly thinking about it in the context of just AI, ensuring that we get just AI. Yeah, I think I actually might have missed that one out. Possibly a little bit before, but some of the available resources, which, as I mentioned, are all on the website. There is this brief, this 10-point brief, which really looks at the impacts, the cross-cutting nature of data justice, everything from platform workers' rights to collective rights to indigenous rights and protections. And then, of course, as we mentioned, these opportunities. There are two primers, which, as I mentioned, are really useful to try and understand the advancement of the issues of data justice. The one is on data and social justice. These are really nice 20-page primers that bring together a lot of that literature in a very accessible, succinct way that focuses on the issues in relation to AI, and likewise the primer on data and economic justice by IT for Change. Very nice focus on some of the IT issues. Please take a look at those. And then we have these guides, these really substantial guides intended for policy makers, for developers, and communities, more as kind of working documents. You might use them for training purposes. They're much bigger, they're much more in depth, but they still, reduce the research to something that is hopefully very practical and applied for policymakers, for impacted communities and individuals, and of course for developers. And then we've got other advancing data justice research and practice, which is the big literature review that I mentioned, advancing data justice and practice, which are the stories that I mentioned, and the interim annotated bibliography and table of that enormous data set that we spoke about. Sorry, that is the big spread that I had spoken about earlier. Please look at those and those interesting stories, of which videos have been made by the Alan Turing Institute. Very, very fascinating. And then just quickly to end off, because I think we are out of time, the interactive data justice tool, focusing on 10 principles. These aren't exactly the 10 principles that I mentioned in the policy paper. They're the underlying principles of data justice around equitable access and benefits, ensuring democratic participation, moving beyond a one-size-fits-all solution. These highly contextualized. I think the stories from the partners show the importance of context to that. Centered human rights and community rights, mandate fair practice, consider equitable alternatives where existing frameworks mean people aren't able to exercise their rights, or alternative forms of stewardship, local sovereignty and global needs with the globalized nature of this, and how sovereign individual autonomy for individual sovereign rights, but also national sovereign rights are ensured, and that they're just. Ensuring workers' rights, transparency by default, as an underlying, we've mentioned all of those, and to protect and enable restorative justice and redress, which I think is the final point I want to end on, because I think that's what takes it beyond some of the human rights frameworks. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alison. This was super interesting. I'd like you to take a seat. Unfortunately, time is running, so we won't... It's not working, thank you. That one is working. So unfortunately, we won't have time for questions because we're running late for the session, and we're having another one starting at noon, and our speakers as well that need to run. But I still would like to pass the mic to Maya for a closing word as a co-chair of the working group.
Thank you very much, Sophie. It makes me incredibly proud to look back and see all the work that's been done. I thank you also to UK government, which supported data justice and data trust, data intermediaries project, right? Without that gracious support, it would be impossible to achieve the global diversity that Data Governance Working Group always wanted to demonstrate that it's important to do. So it's my task as a, can I please ask for silence in the room, please? With this, my co-chairing and the co-chairing of Jenny is ending, and I'm very happy and proud that baton will be that two most active members, well, one of the most active and devoted members are going to take over the co-chairing of the group. It makes me happy, and I'm relieved because this is a warranty that good work will be continued. Shamik Kundu is one of the co-chair, and Bertrand Mondoubert, I still can't pronounce the name. These are my dear two colleagues and friends who are going to co-chair the data governance group in the future. 2 sentences. I would really like to give you floor to say 2 sentences, because I know that you've been already having meetings and making some decisions.
Well, thank you. It's really a big challenge for us. We spoke a lot with Shamik during these couple of days, and well, probably I will say things that Shamik would maybe want to say, but since we are very aligned anyway, I can't remember who said that, whether it was his thoughts or mine. We are sitting on the shoulders of really two wonderful ladies who did such a great job to make this group exist. So thank you so much, Maya, and thank you so much, Jenny. And really, this is extremely sincere, and it's just not just politeness. I mean, it was a challenge to build GPay. We know that, and we know today that GPay exists, and we'll try to make it continue. So maybe just a few quick thoughts. First of all, I think we are all impressed by all the work that has been done. There is a lot of work. It's extremely precious. And on the other hand, we must be conscious that the adoption of this work is still a challenge. We need to make it being known and applied in the various countries which are involved in GPay. And it's still not the case, we know that. What is really good is that we saw that in many projects, the outcomes was not only reports, but also trying to build some tools. And I think we should go further in this direction for dissemination of all the work that has been done in GPay so far. It's the case for data governance, it's probably the case for other groups. And since I'm speaking about other working groups, also we want to have the best relationship with the other ones to make cross collaborations on that. And this is tough because all the experts are extremely busy people in a way. We've been selected because we were already busy and maybe we were a bit mad to accept that, but anyway, we are. So we are here. So we really want to collaborate with the other working groups as far as possible in order maybe to get better knowledge management of all the production that has been done so far once again. If we want to disseminate, it means that we need to find out what are the different bricks that have been created in the various reports. So these are a few hints, but probably Shamik will add many brilliant ideas because he has brilliant ideas.
No, I have no more ideas. I spoke my few words before. I think the only thing I would add is, in addition to being responsive to other members of GPay, the member countries, the governments, one thing I do want to do, I hope there are some people here who have nothing to do with GPay before this week, is that the work we do needs to start becoming relevant to you as well. It can't just be something that the expert group works on or we feed into the government. That's important, but ultimately it may or may not work. It will work much more likely if we reach out to a broader community, people who are interested in things like data and justice with data, etc. And that community understands what we're trying to do, maybe builds upon it, maybe improves it. That would be perhaps an even better sign of success than influencing just the governments. That's what I like.
Thank you very much to you both. Thank you very much to everyone. And thank you, Maya.
We are absolutely running out of time, but we were always open for questions and collaboration. So please contact us. We need to run some of us to another panels, but I'll be around. Ask me questions, ask Sophie questions, and the team. And for the very end, Data Governance Working Group was always supported by CIMIA Montreal Center. Without this incredible support, the work would be impossible. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, all the team, and thank you, all the colleagues. Thank you for your devotion. Experts are doing work pro bono, and it's up to the governments to use this opportunity to use the results of the work. So the challenge is on the governments, and we will continue in the work, but governments needs to step up as well. So thank you very, very much.